All right, friends, welcome back to another episode of Healedish. This is part 2 of Toni's story. So if you have not already listened to part 1, I highly recommend going and listening to that because she talks about how she found the World Race, which is a missions organization where you go to 11 countries in 11 months. So with all of that being said, let's jump back in.
She's possessed by a demon. She wants you to deliver her from the demon. I had never... I was 25 when we went on this trip. I had never in my 25 years of life ever heard of demon possession. I had no idea what this guy was talking about. And so he's like...
It just shows how different these denominations are because some people I talked to, it's all they heard about was demon possession and how you need to be careful. So that's crazy. I can imagine like not only you're being told that, but it's a pretty extreme display or situation that you're being put in at the time.
Yeah, so she's screaming at us. This guy's trying to translate that she's possessed by, he called it a snake demon. I still to this day don't know what that means. But that she was possessed by a snake demon and that she came because she knew that we were the ones that could get the demon out of her. How she knew, nobody knows. But
Do you think she actually said that, or that's his interpretation of her behavior?
I don't know. I mean, she was saying a lot in Telugu, so I don't know. Again, I had never heard of demon possession before, so I questioned even what that was. But I was like, okay, God, like I saw new things at training camp. Like this is just another new thing. Like, okay. So I remember there were a couple on our team who had grown up doing this kind of stuff. My husband did not though. So he knew about it, but he had never like seen it and certainly never experienced it. So the couple on our team who were like, yeah, we're going to get this demon out of her and she's going to accept Christ into her heart. They are like trying to lay their hands on her. And she is like, I have never heard such loud screaming in my life. Screaming and yelling and like withering around and like cannot control her body. And they're laying their hands on her and they're casting out this demon, you know, in the name of Jesus, get out of her. In the name of Jesus, get out of her. And then somebody starts like addressing it by a name. And I can't remember the name, but like some certain name for this demon. Mm-hmm. And then like the preacher is also praying, but in Telugu. And there was one moment where she like stopped and she looked at one of our teammates and it was like, I don't know. I don't know if I, even to this day, believe in demon possession, but it was like I could see something, like there is something in this woman. And it looked, and then she screamed like this one final scream and then collapsed to the ground, and then she was fine. And I'm standing in the background because I'm like too terrified to go near her, and I'm like, what are we doing? Like, what is this? I was so terrified. I didn't know what to say. I walked back into the like living room area, whatever, and just cried because I was so scared. And
so she was really fine after that?
Totally fine. Like stood up, wiped her face off because, you know, like snot and tears and, you know, drool and everything. Totally fine, had a normal conversation. They invited her in. We had food, and it was like totally normal. And I think that scared me more than the like screaming and the wailing and the like casting out the demon. Like I was terrified of that. And I remember,
why do you think that scared you more?
I think partly because I had never seen anything like that before, and partly because I think in that moment I was like, one, why was I never taught that this was a thing, that people can be possessed by demons? And two, how is it possible? And I think just the drastic change like that, like just how quickly she went from acting like that to, we're just going to have a normal conversation. Like everything's totally fine. And I didn't know how to process that. Mm-hmm. Yeah. That was the only, to my recollection, that was the only like demon possession we saw that entire year.
Wow, that is a crazy welcome to the world race. I was going to ask you, what do you think it was about the first 3 days that made you start questioning? Like in your journal, did you say why you were thinking, or what do you think triggered those thoughts?
I don't know. I think honestly, all along, I had some doubts. Like I was so amped up and excited about the idea of traveling the world that I wasn't focusing on what it would take mentally, emotionally, spiritually. And so going from like training camp, which was like obviously extremely spiritually draining, and then thinking, oh crap, we're going to have a year of this. Like, how does anybody survive something like this? And then going into the like 3 days or 4 days we had before we actually like launched to India, I think part of it was I was just so drained already, and I could not mentally fathom going for another 11 months. Like I just couldn't. And so, but then I also kept telling myself, like, I'm doubting because Satan wants to get to me. Like, that's his job. That's what he does. He's going to put these thoughts in my head so that I don't do everything I'm called to do on this trip. Like, he's going to take away the bits of me that God wants to use so that he can't use me. And so I brushed it off because that's what I thought. Like, it was just Satan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So other than that experience with the woman, do you feel, like looking back on it, do you feel like you did very much there? I know you said painting, but...
In India?
Yeah.
No. So we got to the end of India, and you go at the beginning of a month and you stay till the end, and then you know, that's how they do it. We didn't do, like, in my mind, I had this grand idea of, we're going to do door-to-door evangelism, and we're going to be standing in front of hundreds of people and preaching the gospel, and then everybody's going to come and they're going to get saved, and we're going to be the ones that lead them to the Lord. And there was nothing like that. Like, the girls' orphanage had Sunday services, you know, upstairs where we were sleeping. And so we got to do, like, each of us shared our testimony during the church service, but they were already people who were coming to church. So it wasn't like we were preaching to people who like needed to receive the gospel. So I remember leaving India feeling very discouraged. Like, what did we do? Like, why were we here? And the ministry we served with actually is still there to this day and doing very good things because they work with orphans. But it's just, they've had like several world race teams come. And so I've been able to talk to some of the, just throughout the years, and they all felt the same way. Like, we didn't do anything. We just hung out with which there's a lot to be said for like spending some time with kids who don't have parents and loving on them. But, you know, I like very far removed now. I'm very against short-term missions now, because I can see like those kids that we loved for like the 10 days at each place, and then we left. And like these kids already don't have parents. They only have like their like orphanage parents who love them and take care of them. But like we were there and we loved them, and we developed relationships with them, and then we're like, okay, bye. And like those and that happens month after month, or, you know, for however many world race teams go there. And I just am like, did we actually do anything for them, or did we just break their hearts?
No, absolutely. And I just shared that story that I had with a girl in Thailand. And that's exactly what happened. Is her mom had committed suicide right before we came, and it was very fresh, and she just arrived at the orphanage, and we had bonded so much, and she had to be physically pried from me. Like, she would not let go as we were saying goodbye, and she was sobbing and saying, sister, sister, and reaching out for me. And this missionary woman was pulling her off of me. And I just remember feeling like, I think I caused so much harm, you know, and I saw people in the comments, some people tried to defend it. I understand they were trying to make me feel good, you know, because they said, well, I'm sure you met her at a hard time. You don't know. She could look back on that memory positively. And maybe, but I will say that's not healthy for somebody to come in for a week and her get extremely attached to me, and then she never sees me again. And that's really what a lot of these short-term missions are. And especially when you're going to places where they're already Christians. A lot of the missionary work that I have done, when I went with Peru with Global Expeditions, that was more so street evangelism, but I don't know. The ones that I did with Bethel, we were just going to churches. We were just sharing our testimony. We were just hanging out with other Christians on the other side of the globe, and it can feel discouraging because it doesn't feel like you did anything.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And we definitely had months. I mean, India was one of those months. And then we went to Nepal from there. And I was excited about Nepal because of the Himalayan mountains, obviously because of Mount Everest. I had always wanted to visit Nepal because I had heard so much positive about the culture and the people. So that was one of the countries I was really excited about. So we go to Nepal. My husband and I, we had our 3rd anniversary while we were on the world race, and it was the day we traveled from India to Nepal. So I was like, oh, that's cool. Like we get to be in 2 countries for whatever. So cool.
New beginnings.
New beginnings. And so we get to Nepal, and we're staying with this family right outside of Kathmandu. Our host, Meg, he's actually a Sherpa, on Mount Everest. And so he will carry people's supplies and gear and climb Mount Everest. And he did it and he still does it. It's so crazy that he's one of the people we've actually stayed in contact with because we loved him so much. But he took the month off, which it was kind of like the end of climbing season anyway, but he took the month off so that he could host our team. So we stayed with him in this really awesome house. My husband and I had our own bedroom, which was really nice because we actually did get good time together. I won't say all we did, but what we did that month was we'd hike to these incredibly remote villages, and they called them prayer walks. But we were hiking 10 hours a day to go on these prayer walks. And then we would go to churches. So in Nepal, they believe that the Sabbath is on Saturday. And so they have church services on Saturdays instead of Sundays. So we would go to church on Saturdays. And so we would do what we know as Sunday school classes and kids classes, and then we would preach and we would do the music. So we did a lot of that. But a lot of it was about really just serving the the host, the family that hosted us for the month. It was very chill. We did get to do more of the evangelism I wanted to, but a lot of it was still for church people. But I also remember, going to the house that we stayed in was surrounded by rice fields. And so I remember we would be on the roof, having a team debrief. So every night the teams had to meet, and talk through the day. We would do feedback, which I will get into. And I remember we would be sitting on the roof and people would be out in the fields, getting the rice. And so there was one day where we just had to go out into the rice fields, as they're working and tell them about Jesus. And at the time I was like, this is what I signed up for. But in retrospect, I'm like, we are interrupting their literal livelihood. What are we doing?
You're like, hey, can I tell you about Jesus real quick?
Yeah, can you please stop picking the food that you're going to eat tomorrow so that I can
oh
my gosh, it was just so it was during Nepal, which was our 2nd month, that I started getting migraines. And I had lived for years with migraines and took this ridiculously expensive medication for it. And then I stopped having migraines for 5 months. And I was so convinced that that was God's way of preparing my body and my mind, literally, to go out into the world. And so I was like, oh my gosh, because it had been years since I had gone more than 2 weeks without a crippling migraine. And yeah, it was 5 months that I didn't. And then in Nepal, I started getting them again. And I was so discouraged because I was like, God, okay, God, what are you trying to teach me in this? And I didn't have my medicine. I had medication that I took on a regular basis that I didn't have because I hadn't had migraines in 5 months. And it's ridiculously expensive and I couldn't afford, just all the things.
Yeah.
I was like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? And my migraines are not like, I get so jealous of people who have migraines but can still kind of function. I'm not one of those people. So when I get them, they make me physically sick. Like I will get like it interrupts my vision. I can't have noise or light. Like they take me out. I still get them occasionally now, and so I started getting those again in Nepal. And obviously like I can't go out and do ministry if I can't even keep my food down because the pain is so intense. And I remember people telling me that I still needed to go out and do ministry and just trust that God was going to take the pain away so that I could share the gospel. And I'm like in my bed crying as like my teammates are coming to me and saying like, Toni, you just need to trust that God. And I'm like, you're talking right now is making it worse. Like I cannot. And that lasted like the whole year. I would get like one every 10 days or so the entire year. It was absolutely horrible.
And they're telling you, because they're probably coming from, like you said, some of these people were more charismatic. So this would be, I could totally see somebody from the Bethel sector saying, well, you just need to have faith. This is the enemy. Yep. This is a demonic attack. He doesn't want you to go out and minister. So don't let him win. If you go out, God will heal you and honor your sacrifice, and you'll just magically be good if you go out.
That is exactly what I was told time and time again. And which, great, if we're talking about faith, that is a great thing to think. Like, of course I need to be trusting that God is going to take this pain away. And of course I need, I get all of that, but right now I physically can't move. And so I cannot get out of this bed and walk downstairs and go, and it was monsoon season. And so like the constant change in pressure, in the atmosphere was not helping either. And actually, in my opinion, is probably what kind of kickstarted these migraines.
I bet. Yeah.
And these people are like, oh, you just need to trust that God's going to take your pain away. Let's go. And I'm very grateful that, because unfortunately I lived with this for years, like my husband knew me, and so he was like, she's not going. Like, we can go do ministry. We'll be gone for the day. She's going to stay here and sleep. And so he was so great about advocating for me when people would not listen to me. But yeah, so it was just like, and that was month 2. And I still had 9 months after that of all these things that kept creeping up. So I mentioned feedback. So one of the things that we were encouraged to do as a team every night, as often as possible anyway, we had to get together as a team, hash out the day, talk about like the things we saw God do, and then we had to give each other feedback. And so what this was supposed to look like was people were supposed to give us encouragement, which was great. Like, oh, Toni, I really saw that today you really embraced this one kid who is by himself, and I just love that you did that. You made him feel so loved. But also, I saw that you didn't really have a positive attitude today. And so I just want to encourage you to like really focus and like lean into God and just like pray to be more optimistic and, whatever. So this was like every day. And I remember a lot of time, and like we weren't allowed to comment on like the constructive criticism is what they called it. We weren't allowed to comment on the constructive criticism. So if we felt
like defend yourself.
Right. So if we felt like we were being told something that we didn't agree with, we just had to sit there and say, okay, thank you for your feedback. And I remember being so angry about that because there were so many times that I was like, what you're saying is completely untrue. And if you knew me better, you would know that what you're saying is like crazy. But we weren't allowed to do that. And I would just get so angry about that. And this was pretty much every day that we would do this.
I imagine that would break you down and also kind of create a hostile/shallow relationships with the people around you, because I could also see a world where they're kind of reaching for something to say something bad because it's encouraged to give positive and negative feedback. So even if there's not something that was like glaringly like, oh my gosh, Toni was the worst today, but we have to try to find something to criticize you about. Personally, for me, oh my gosh, I couldn't handle that. I'm so sensitive, and I think that for me, if I got feedback like that daily, the very next day I would be feeling like I'm on edge, like I'm walking on eggshells, feeling like I can't be a human, or also just like, how am I being perceived to everybody because I'm going to hear about it tonight.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm at a point now in my life where like, I literally don't give a crap what people think about me. But then I cared very much what people thought about me. And so anything that was not totally positive, I was taking personally and then thinking like, oh my gosh, it's because I'm not good enough. It's because they don't like me. It's because I'm not allowing God to use me. It's because I'm not doing ministry well. Like I was internalizing every tiny thing that was said to me that was not positive. And like, I made that who I was. And so then I lived this whole year, like with every negative thing that somebody said that was like gift wrapped in positive language. I took it to heart and like, that was who I became, which then obviously just intensified everything that they were already saying. And it was just, I mean, I remember telling people like, I don't feel like this is healthy. And they'd be like, oh, well, it's because you're not liking what people are saying to you. Like, well, duh, of course I don't like it, but it just, I mean, and there were some things like I was a pretty pessimistic person back then. And so people often commented on that and they weren't wrong. Like I was 100% like anything that went wrong, I was like complaining about. So I appreciated that people were willing to call that out. But then there were other things where I was like, this is crap. Like, and the fact that I can't even defend myself is even worse.
Yeah, no, that's a very rough environment to be put in.
Yeah.
So where did you guys go after Nepal?
So after Nepal, we went to Thailand. Thailand was one of my favorite countries. So we actually, so every 2 months, so the squads, like I said, they travel to each country together. I think by the time we actually went to India, like 4 or 5 people had decided they were not going to go. So at training camp, there were about 60 of us. By the time we launched, there were 55. So about all 55 of us would travel to the countries together. And then with our teams, we would like disperse throughout the country. And then we would do ministry in our own places for the month, all come back together and then travel to the next place. So we all traveled to Thailand together. And then every 2 months on the race, instead of getting to the country and then immediately dispersing, they would do what they called a squad debrief. And so the whole squad, like all 55 of us, would be together for like 3 or 4 days. And you would get to talk with other people in your squad and the ministries they were doing. And you would get to encourage each other, the worship services, the prophecy, the tongues, all the things. So we were in Bangkok. We were at a YWAM base. And that's where we did the squad debrief. So then after the 3 or 4 days, the whole squad dispersed. And my husband and I, actually, that was like our first, we're going to have like good married time. And he and I stayed in Bangkok for like 4 days, just the 2 of us. Nice. And we went all over the city. We got to spend good time together, see the sights, which was really cool. And then we traveled up north near the border of Laos and Thailand. And we worked with a YWAM team while we were there. So I know you've talked about YWAM and you've had people talk about YWAM. So I had heard things about YWAM, and so I was very hesitant. But this was actually not a bad experience. I didn't leave feeling like what in the world did we just do? But ministry was very non-existent that month, and I was so angry. So when you sign up for the world race, you get to choose like which route you go on. And so we chose the route we were on partly because of Thailand. And I had always wanted to, it was back then, it was like a dream of mine to be in Bangkok and like minister in the red light district. Like that was all I wanted to do. So I was like really angry when another team got to stay in Bangkok and do that. And we had to travel outside the city. And then we get to this YWAM base and like basically did nothing all month. Like I was furious. And we were staying in this, it was essentially a living room. Like all of us were camped out in this living room. And then there was this teeny tiny bedroom that they were like, okay, Jeremy and Toni, you guys can have this bedroom, with windows that were just the window frames. There was no actual window in it.
Yeah.
Like, so it was like we had privacy, but we didn't have privacy. And then there was like no kitchen. There was one bathroom for the 6 of us. And so like for meals, we would like do easy stuff like cereal and granola bars and, whatever. But then for lunch and dinner, we would actually have to walk to like the grocery store that had like a full like deli and whatever to buy our food. So Thailand was one of the months where our food budget was not enough to cover the cost of the food. And so we had to spend our own money every day, like to supplement for the cost of foods. Because Thailand, where we were, it was expensive.
Yeah, more expensive than what had been budgeted for that.
Yeah, so our budget for Thailand was $5 a day for food. And so we were spending probably an additional $5 a day, but per person. So like for us, it was an extra $10 a day. So we went through Thailand budget very quickly. But we had a ton of downtime. And so that month, that was the first month where I felt like our team was actually able to there were a lot of issues on our team. And when you're living with people day in and day out, there are going to be issues. And so there are a lot of issues on our team. And we were able to work on those issues throughout the month because we had very little ministry time. It was also during this month that one of our teammates decided, so she wore glasses, basically blind without her glasses. And she said she felt like God was telling her to stop wearing her glasses because he was going to heal her sight.
And, this is so Bethel.
Yeah. And I remember, and again, I didn't grow up with healing. And at this point, I had now been exposed to it. But I didn't grow up with healing stuff. And so I was like, you can't see. What's going to happen? And yeah, so she decided to stop wearing her glasses. And I remember thinking okay, God, you need to do this. You need to do this for her, but you need to do this for me because I doubt that this can happen. I don't believe that you're going to heal her. And she went the entire year not wearing her glasses. And the entire year, her sight was not healed. She still wears glasses to this day. And I was so angry about that. Not angry at her because I admired her faith, but I was angry at God for not healing her. She felt so confident that God had told her, stop wearing your glasses because your faith is going to heal your sight. And then, I don't remember once and she didn't have contacts. And so I was furious that she wasn't healed. Furious.
Oh, I believe it.
And I can imagine, her too, but.
Oh yeah. Well, she had full faith. And I think that won't get too much into what I believe or anything like that. But when it comes to Bethel's theology of God always wants to heal, that's where I run into, I don't know. Okay. Because there's the Bible verses where it talks about how, if you just had the faith of a mustard seed, right? And I'm you're telling me that girl who refused to wear glasses for months and months and months missed out on even taking in the sights of the world where she was traveling because she fully believed. I would argue she did have the faith of a mustard seed.
Yeah, and I never doubted that either.
Yeah, so then that kind of falls apart, Bethel's theology, in my opinion, because I had another situation happen where in my first year of school, there were a brother and sister duo at Bethel. And their mom was really sick. She had cancer. And that family had so much faith. I remember they were constantly posting on Facebook and they were like, she will be healed. We're not even worried about it. And it completely rocked me when their mom passed away during first year because I just didn't understand. I had never seen people have so much faith. And yeah, it just doesn't make sense. That line of theology that he always 100% wants to heal. When you're seeing people who fully, they could not believe more, and it's not happening.
And she was that person. I had never seen a faith so strong, in a belief that God was going to do something. And we got to the end of the year and, I don't remember if it was actually at the airport, we're flying home. but I remember her putting her glasses on, just bawling because her vision wasn't even a little bit better. It was like the exact same. And I mean, to this day, she still has a strong faith. Like, she was a missionary overseas for a while after that. Like, and I commend her for that. But I'm like, I feel like that would have rocked me to my core. Wow. If that had been me.
No, that's a great story. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So we had Thailand, and then at the end of Thailand, or in the middle of Thailand, they told us, we're going to be doing some team switches. And so we're going to go to Phuket for a couple of days before we go to Malaysia, which was our next country. And we're going to do some team switches. So in the middle of the month, they had like emailed out this form to all the squad members, basically like, what do you love about your current team? What are some struggles you have with your current team? Who do you love on your current team? Who do you struggle with on your current team? And then are there any squad members that you would really like to have on your team or you would really not like to have on your team? So I was like, oh, this is, because they didn't ask that at the beginning, obviously, because we didn't know the people. And so I was oh, that's really cool that they're asking these questions. Like, they want to make sure that the teams mesh well. And I appreciate that. So I remember my husband is like the most easygoing person on the planet. And so he was like, I don't care. Just make sure there's another guy. Like, great, whatever. And whereas I was like, there is this one girl who from like training camp, I just knew she and I would butt heads really bad. And I was grateful that I was aware enough of that because I was at that point in life where like I was too afraid to say, like I didn't want to hurt people's feelings, so I wasn't going to say that. So I put on the form her name, and I was like, and then if you put somebody's name, like who would you not want to be with, you had to explain why. Yeah. And so I explained why, like I just feel like our personalities are too similar. I feel like we would butt heads. Post World Race, I am very much about Enneagram, and we are both Enneagram 8s, and so now I understand why we butt heads so much. But I didn't, that wasn't a thing then. And so I put her name, explained why, whatever. We get to like the 2 days in Phuket, 2 days later, where they switch teams, and they put us on the same team. And I remember seeing that and being like, are you effing kidding me? Like, are you kidding me that this is the one person out of 55 people I asked not to have on the team and you put us together? And I remember we had these people called squad parents who would fly out from the States for every squad debrief and like meet with each of the teams individually. And they were part of the process of creating the new teams. And I remember being like, why did you put us together? And they were like, well, we feel like you two are going to push each other to grow the most. And so that's why we put you together. And I'm just like, so you don't actually care what we think. Okay, great. Like, I was so angry. Like,
it's very frustrating because it's kind of like they took your honest thoughts that you think are going to like, oh, this is a safe place between us. Like, you care about our input. And then you're like, man, I really wish I just wouldn't have said anything because odds are she wouldn't have been
against me.
Yeah. I could see a world though, like, not saying it's right, but when you said that you put her, I immediately thought, oh my gosh, I bet they're going to put her on your team to challenge you, you know,
and that's exactly what they said.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So they did that. And then we had like one day they took one of our team members who was on our team and like moved him. So they had like the squad itself. The squad is broken up into teams, and then each team had a leader. And then they had 3 people on the squad who were considered squad leaders. And so basically what those squad leaders would do is instead of being like on a team, they would just travel the country throughout the month and like meet with each of the teams. Mm-hmm. So our team leader that we had the first 3 months became a squad leader. So he was no longer with us, and my husband was extremely upset because they had a great relationship. They were really good friends. And gave us a different team leader, which ended up being great. He was awesome. We loved him. And then put this girl on our team. And we went into Malaysia, and I was like, this freaking sucks. I'm so angry about this. Like, they took Jeremy's friend away. They put her on our team. Like, what in the world? And Malaysia so we were in Penang, which is Jamestown is an island, I believe, no, I can't remember. I feel terrible. But we were in Penang. And so so this month was kind of like a mix of so many things. So we worked at a homeless shelter. We worked at a Christian coffee shop. We actually worked with PenHop, which is Penang International House of Prayer. Ooh. And I know you've had people on here talk about International House of Prayer. So they have a Penang.
This is a plant of an International House of Prayer.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And then we also volunteered at a hospital collecting money for cancer patients. So we had this like random hodgepodge of ministries. And we were actually, I don't even know, like it wasn't a hotel. It was like an apartment almost that we stayed in. But it was us with another team. So there were like 15 or 16 of us all living together this month in this apartment. 2 bathrooms, 1 microwave, and 1 little stovetop. Like that was it. So we ate out for most of our food. Ministry was pretty okay. Like the team dynamic was terrible because essentially this girl and I like butt heads so bad that it was like deeply affecting the team itself. I will say I think the reason we didn't completely crumble that month is because each day we individually got to choose where we went for ministry. And so she and I always chose to just not do ministry together.
Yeah.
So it was like pretty, realistically uneventful. In Malaysia, my husband got dengue fever. I don't know if you know dengue fever.
No, I don't. Tell me.
Yeah,
Doesn't sound good.
Dengue, so it's like malaria except way worse. People die from dengue fever. And so I remember when he first spiked a fever, he had a fever of like 104. And I was like, oh my gosh, he's going to die. Like, I'm so scared. My mother-in-law at the time was a nurse. And so I remember FaceTiming or like not FaceTiming, Skyping her and being like, Jeremy has 104 fever. What should we do? And she's like, you need to take him to the hospital. So we took him to the hospital. Luckily, we had great insurance. We took him to the hospital and they tested him for all this stuff. And I had like done some research online and like all of his symptoms, because he had other things too. I was like, it sounds like dengue fever, which was very common in that area. And they were like, oh no, he doesn't have dengue fever. Like he just has a virus. He'll be over it in a week. And I'm like, he's had 104 fever for 4 days. Like that's not good. Yeah. So he's obviously like bedridden. And there are a couple of people, because there were 2 teams together, there were a couple of people who would like come in and pray for him. And like, that was really nice. And I appreciated that, but like praying for healing, he's not getting better. So we take him back to a clinic and they test him again. And they're like, no, it's not dengue fever. And I'm like, I don't know. I'm not a doctor, but I'm like, I would put money on this. And they're like, it's not dengue fever. But they never gave him an official diagnosis, so there was never any medication or anything. So he literally spent the entire month, pretty much the entire month of Malaysia, laying in bed. Like, hardly participated in ministry. And it was discouraging because I felt like, like I said, there were a couple of people who loved on him, prayed for him, and encouraged him, but mostly like people ignored him. And I was so angry because I was like, we're this team who believes in prayer and healing, and why is everybody not in here praying for him? I was so mad about that. And I remember expressing it during one of our like joint team meetings, and people were like, well, we have a few people who are praying for him. And I'm like, but we believe in like healing or laying hands on people. Like, why are we not doing this? Yeah, so he spent the entire month in bed, more or less. It was like toward the end of the month, he had like 36 hours where he basically felt totally fine. And so he was sick for like 2 weeks. He had this 36 hours where he felt really, really good. And then he had like a second cycle of high fever, constant sweat. And one of the main like signs of dengue fever is you're sick for about 10 days. You have 36 to 48 hours where your body like breaks fever and you're fine. And then there's a second cycle. And so once that second cycle started, I was like, this is for sure dengue fever. Yeah, so it was basically the whole month. Mm-hmm. From there we went to Cambodia. Cambodia was one of the hardest months of my entire life. So we get to Cambodia. We're in Phnom Penh for a couple of days. We actually do another debrief there for some reason. I don't even remember why. Oh, because they did team switches again. Because some of the team dynamics were not working out. Except they kept this girl and I together. Of course. So we were like pretty close to Phnom Penh. So Phnom Penh was that month where I was like, okay, how much of this is about ministry and how much of this is about money? So we're in Phnom Penh. We're in a village outside of Phnom Penh, and we're staying at this like some house. Like the person who owns the house was like on vacation somewhere for the whole month that we were there. But they were friends with this pastor's family that we were working with. So it was this house, all like cement blocks, like that was the like concrete blocks. That was the house with like a tin roof, a door that hardly closed. It was monsoon season, and it was like record heat. And so obviously no air conditioning, no fans, anything like that. They had 2 teams staying in this house. And there was so little room for these 2 teams that most of the people were hanging their hammocks from the rafters and like sleeping in their hammocks. Some people were in their sleeping bags on the floor, and then they had 2 rooms with 2 beds. And that was it. And the ministry that month, and the reason that it, like that part, when I say it was more about money than ministry, is because, so we had people in our squad who were like in charge of all the travel and lodging and all of that. And they had found, one of the girls was on our team, and they had found a hotel like half a mile down the road that for all like 15 of us to stay in this hotel cost half as much as this house did. And so they were like, well, can we move the teams to the hotel? And they were like, no, you have to pay us for this house. You have to stay here. And wow. And it was like 1 bathroom with a squatty potty and like a bucket of water that you poured over your head for a shower with like 15 of us who had to use this. It was the hottest, most miserable month of my life. In our ministry, we worked with another YWAM. It was just a couple. It wasn't even a team. Like they didn't have a team that month, but it was a YWAM couple. And then we would go around to villages and like preach. And that was the first, like I had been to third world countries before, and obviously even earlier in the race, but that was the first time that I had like truly seen like depravity. Like these people like had their houses built on top of a landfill. And like we're going and like trying to tell these people about the gospel, and like I just remember feeling not encouraged, but just overwhelmingly guilty, and then told I wasn't allowed to feel guilty for that. And like just
what did you feel guilty about? Just the fact that you guys were focusing on sharing the gospel when they had very immediate needs that they needed? Yeah,
or just knowing that like I was going to be able to come back to the States and live in comfort and, I mean, realistically luxury compared to them. And like, I'd probably never think of them again. And that was where I really began to question what benefit are we going to have here? I mean, I had little moments, but this is where I really began questioning, like, what good are we actually doing? Even if we're here preaching the gospel, and even if these people accept the Lord, then what? Like, we leave, and then how are they going to grow the relationship with the Lord? How are they going to learn about God? How are they going to get plugged into a church? Like, what are we doing? We're just saving their souls so they don't go to hell? Like, what are we doing? How are we benefiting these people? And we got to the end of the month, and I remember sharing this with my team, and they were like, well, Toni, like, you just have to remember that, like, one person plants a seed and one person waters it, and then another person helps it grow, and you're just the seed planter, and you have to trust that other people are going to come after you. And I was like, that's not good enough.
That's very like spiritually bypassing the concern there.
Very much so. Yeah. And all throughout the year, I was told constantly, don't question it, just trust the process. Like, you need to just trust God. And I'm like, I don't understand how I'm not allowed to question things. I don't get it. And it was during this month that we were talking to like these people that we had gotten to know that weren't affiliated, like they just lived near us. And this one girl was very candid about missionaries who came to their village, and she like spoke to great English. She was very knowledgeable, very educated, and she told us like the amount of money that you guys spend to come here to do whatever it is you do, like you could send half as much money, like just send the money to help these people, and that would be wildly more beneficial than what you're doing. And I was like, oh my gosh, you're probably not wrong.
Oh, yeah, absolutely not wrong. I feel like the first time that somebody pointed that out to me, I felt extreme guilt, you know, because going back to how you guys painted that house, right, in the first month, I remember at one point somebody was like, well, don't you think it's okay for missions teams to go if they're doing something? Like, what if they're building something? And they said the best thing you can do is pay local workers to build it. Because then you're helping the community, you're helping more people. What you should be doing is helping the community itself and just sending money over there rather than you feeling good about yourself because you painted something and you built something yourself and then you leave. And that really kind of shocked me at the time, or made me reassess things, because I was, at the time, I didn't love short-term missions, but I thought, well, if they're doing something practical, if they're doing something like that they're actually leaving them with. But yeah, that really challenged it for me, that no, it's better to just provide it to the community and hire local people to do that and give them the money for it.
Yeah, and in retrospect, I mean, for sure, that's what, like, we could have used that money for so much. Like, it would have actually helped the community if we had just sent the, I don't know, whatever, $1,200 a person we used for that month. Like, it would have been so much more helpful to them, or any month really. But
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so we ended Cambodia, like one of our last nights there. The people, like the whole ministry team that we had worked with throughout the month, said, hey, we want to have a night where we just honor and thank you guys for like coming and helping us this month. And I was like, oh, that's cool. Okay, whatever. And they had set up like all these chairs. Again, there were 2 teams, so there were like 15 or 16 of us, plus a couple of the squad leaders had come in to like our group. So there were like a good 20 of us from the squad at this location. And they had set up all these chairs in a circle with all these buckets in front of the chairs, and they did a feet washing ceremony, which I can tell you was, I mean, honestly, one of the most humbling experiences of my life, mostly because I was like, we're here to serve you guys, like to help you, but here you are serving us. Like, it was very humbling. But then I also, like, the guilt came with it. Like, no, we're supposed to be here. Like, you're not supposed to be doing anything. Like, we're supposed to be the ones doing all of this. Yeah, very humbling. It kind of changed my perspective, and like, in some way, like this group of people, they were very appreciative of our help for the month. It was like the people kind of outside of the ones we were working directly with who had the comments about like, if you just send the money, it's actually more helpful. But yeah, so that was that. And then we traveled to Vietnam. So Vietnam is a closed country. I'm sure you know what closed country. So you can't openly be a Christian. It's actually illegal. And so during Vietnam, we had to be very secretive about the ministry we were doing. So we stayed with a pastor and his family. They had like an underground church. And so I don't even know how the World Race got connected with his family, but we got connected. So we were out in Nha Trang, Vietnam, which is like right on the ocean, absolutely gorgeous. And our ministry every month was beach evangelism and teaching English to college kids. Like, that was what we did. Yeah, teaching English. So we did actually do a few English classes, but it was more like, let's teach English and then share the gospel with you and read the Bible with you and whatever. But it was very laid back, and it had to be because like our ministry hosts were terrified of us getting caught. And of them getting caught too, because if we got caught, they were going to be in trouble too. Yeah. So it was very secretive. It was very like, all the teams in Vietnam for that month purposely went to very touristy towns or cities so that it had the appearance of like we're just here on vacation. We weren't allowed to tell people where we stayed. And so, yeah, everything was like very secret, which was weird because it's like we'd been so open for the last 5 months and now we have to be very quiet about what we're doing. So Vietnam, the country and the people, absolutely amazing. Probably second hardest month of the whole year, like ended up being. So in that month, my husband and I, like our marriage was pretty much on the brink of divorce. Like it was so bad, to the point where we told our team, like, we are leaving for a week. We're going elsewhere so that we can fix our marriage, because if we don't, like, we're not going to make it. After 5 months of like hardly any time together, constantly living with people, like it was so bad. And so, we told them, this is what we're doing. And one of the girl on our team who I didn't get along with had very strong opinions about like our extra time that we got off of ministry every week, and had a whole fit about, I won't say a whole fit. She was unhappy with the fact that we were getting vacation and they still had to do ministry. And my husband and I both were like, this isn't a vacation for us. Like, we are going to do ministry. It's just going to be in our marriage. Like, we have to fix this. Yeah. And
you're like, actually, we are going to war to go fight for our marriage right now.
I mean,
because
literally,
like, it's not like you guys were like in a loved up place that you just wanted to go and chill. You knew that you had to have some very serious conversations and try to adjust to figure out how the heck are we going to get past the next few months.
Yeah. Like, we still have 5 months after this. Like, how are we going to survive? So we did that, and it was a great time for us. Like, it literally just spent a lot of time together, a lot of time praying, a lot of time in the Word, a lot of conversations about like, should we just go home? Like, is that going to be better for our marriage? Should we just leave? And we seriously considered it, but then we were like, at that point we were fully funded, and we were like, we're gonna waste half our money, like $15,000 if we go home. Like. And again, it's going to be in our own dime. And so we decided to stay, but we came back to our team and we told them, like, because it had got to the point where we didn't even feel supported by our team or our squad mates. And we were like, you guys have to be support. Like, we understand you're not married. And actually one of the stipulations of the world race was that people weren't allowed to date or even have relationships back home while they were on the race. And so it was like, we understand that you guys don't get it. Like, you're not married, you're not in relationships, like, you don't understand, but like, we need you to support us because we will not be able to get through it if you don't. Which was such a huge burden to put on other people, especially people who don't understand marriage. Like, it was unfair to them, I think. And so it was also during that month that this girl and I, like, it got so bad that we both separately told like the decision makers, like, you have to separate. Like, we cannot continue like this. And I appreciated that we both acknowledged it, but we were like, we have to, like, you have to separate us. So we ended Vietnam. That was the end of our 6 months in Asia. Then we flew to Uganda in Africa. And Uganda was originally not on the list of countries that we were supposed to go to. It was actually supposed to be Rwanda. But there was some like safety issues in the country at the time. So they switched us and we went to Uganda instead. Uganda actually ended up being my absolute favorite country in the entire, like, to this day, my favorite country. I would go back there in a heartbeat. So we get to Uganda. It is now month 7, so we're more than halfway. We start Uganda with a squad debrief, so the whole squad is together. We're in Jinja, Uganda. We go whitewater rafting on New Year's Eve. We like ring in the new year. Like, it was so cool. So it was in Uganda, though, at the beginning during this debrief that I was seriously like, what is the world race? Like, what in the world? So, there were these people like the people who flew in every couple of months from the States. So they were like our squad parents. So part of their job was supposed to be, because they were married, part of their job was supposed to be to really minister and pour into my husband and me, and then the other married couple who were on the race. Up until this point, my husband and I did not feel like they did that. Like they were supposed to be in constant regular communication with us outside of debrief times, like emails, Skype. They rarely did that. And so they get to Uganda, we have this debrief. They were well aware of the issues that this girl and I were having. And I remember we were all sitting in this room, like a room full of bunk beds, and we're all like cramped into these bunk beds for some reason. And they're sitting on one, my husband and I are sitting on a bed, and then our other teammates are on another one, and then this other girl is sitting like across from me and beside the like squad parents. And we're like hashing it out, this girl and I, in front of the entire team, like just letting it all out on the table, like forget constructive criticism, forget encourage, like we are just letting it out. And in the midst of this, I'm also sharing how like she was the one that was the most vocal about basically not being supportive of my marriage or our marriage, and how we are super struggling. We don't know if we can continue. Like the marriage needs to be priority, and I understand fixing relationship with her, but like my husband is who I go home to at the end of this. Like he's like this is it. And I remember the husband of this couple looking me in the eyes and saying, fix your shit with your husband when you get home and do your relationship with her now.
Oh, and my gosh.
I sat back and I was like, no, that is that's not biblical. Like if we're talking about Bible, like,
yeah.
I mean, like tears streaming down my face. My husband was like trying his best to console me, because again, he's like the go with the flow, super adaptable, whatever. And I could see it on her face too. I think that was the moment for her where she was like, I'm done. Like, because as much as she struggled with it, I think deep down she actually understood the importance of my marriage relationship. And that was like the turning point for me. Like, I'm just ready to go home. I'm going to stick this out because we've already raised the money, because we're already halfway through it, but I'm done. Like, yeah, I'm just done. And then I did not speak to that couple the rest of the year. Not one word. I was so angry with them. Like, they had been married 30 years. They had been part of this organization for like 10. They had been on a part of several squads, and they're literally going to tell me to fix my marriage when I get home, which is 5 months away. Like, no, I'm done. So, that ends. This girl is still on our team. Even after all that, they were like, nope, you're going to stick it out. You two are going to figure out your stuff. So they kept us together. They switched our team again, though. They took our leader away and gave us a different one. And then at that point, it was 5 girls and 2 guys. And so it was just like my husband and one other guy, and which was so hard, because then my husband, like, it just has this one guy, but then this guy's not married. And so it's like he was kind of by himself. It was really hard. So we go to this town, like north of Kampala, a couple hours. Ended up being the best month. And I would say ministry-wise, it looked exactly like I wanted it to. We did door-to-door evangelism. We preached in churches. We went to schools. Like, it was everything I had envisioned mission should be. But the reason that it was such an amazing month is the people. Like, I don't know if you've ever been to Uganda or if you've met people from Uganda, but they are the nicest, most loving, most welcoming people you will ever meet in your entire life. Like, we truly felt like family there. I mean, we stuck out like a sore thumb, obviously. Yeah. But like, they were just so good to us. And that was a hard month of ministry, but they served us just as much as we served them. And so 2 significant things happened that month. So that month, that girl that was on my team, after that very heated meeting, decided she was going home. So she was like, gosh, I'm done with this. Like, I'm done. And she had raised all of her support before, like, we even left for the trip. So, like, she'd had all of her money for a long time. So
it
she
is
decided.
so strange to me that they were so hell-bent on keeping you guys together.
We're actually, it's funny because now we're friends. Like, we look back at this and we're like, can
Stop.
you believe,
Are
like,
you
we're
really?
yeah. And we look back at this and we were like,
That is so funny.
Why are they so, like, I was just talking to her yesterday, like, making sure it was okay that I shared this part or whatever. And she's like, yes, please, people need to know. And I was like, awesome. So.
Oh my gosh, no, the world race people are going to be like, see, we were right. They are friends. No.
Like,
no,
listen,
but that's
this was
crazy.
Still unhealthy.
Yeah, no, it was.
Yeah.
And there are people on mission trips, like, I've been on a few mission trips, and there's definitely people that you get paired with who, I mean, they can be mean, or they can be, or like you said, sometimes it's just like a personality thing, Right. So I think it's harder in y'all's circumstance because there weren't that many people. The ones that I went on, there was maybe 20 to 25 people. So you could kind of just steer clear of certain people if you wanted to. But when you are together, that's hard.
Yeah. And like, when I was in it, I was like, oh my gosh, she is so mean. She is so blunt. I was blunt in different ways, but I look like, now that I'm so far removed and I understand more about personality, I'm like, no, she was just honest. Like, she was not afraid to tell people how she felt. And I appreciate that because there were so many people, myself included, who were like afraid to speak up, and she was not afraid to speak up. I was just intimidated by that, and that's why I didn't like her. And in the grand scheme of things, I'm like, she was probably the one person who like really had her crap together. She decided to leave, and so we're sitting in like the living room of our host family, and we're doing like every night somebody led the Bible study or devotion, like to team devotion for the day, and she actually led it that day. And at the end of it, she was like, yeah, and like, I'm leaving, like, I fly out tomorrow. And we were like, what? I mean, I was half torn between like, oh, thank goodness, and also like, crap, this is because of me. Yeah, like, she's going home because I did something. And so she had been communicating with her mom, I guess, and like, she had been talking to a couple of like trusted friends on the squad who were all kind of in agreement with her leaving. And so we drove, she was flying out the next day from Kampala, which was like 2 or 3 hours away. And so we had to like rent a bus, or somebody drove, a driver or whatever. And the 2 squad leaders, my husband and me, and one other person were like, well, we're going to go to Kampala too to see you off. My decision to go was like purely out of guilt. Like, I was like, I'm the reason, I'm ruining her life. Like, I need to, I don't know, fix it or whatever. So we go to Kampala the next day. Her flight's in the evening, so we kind of spent the day in Kampala. And I remember at one point we're sitting at a coffee shop, and it's her and my husband and me. I think just the 3 of us. And she and I are actually having like a civil conversation. And I'm like profusely apologizing for, and I was like, I know it's too late, like, but I'm really sorry. And the 2 squad leaders come over, and they're like, hey, by the way, you need to pay us for the transportation. And she was like, what are you talking about? And she's like, well, this was outside of the budget, and since you're leaving early, like, you have to pay for the driver we hired here and back to the ministry site. And again, like, she had raised all of her funding, and she was like, no, my support is supposed to cover this. And they're like, no, you're deciding to leave early, so your support doesn't cover that. Like, and she knew, like, she had paid her plane ticket home, but whatever. And I remember, like, she started, I mean, in my opinion, like, rightfully so, yelling. She was super angry, and because it was expensive, because it was a last minute hire, and it was like $150, and she was so mad.
Well, she also, they're also going to keep all of the money that she raised. Yeah. So that should be thousands and thousands of dollars that she's not getting back. So you would think that can cover.
Take $150. Yeah, because we're in month 7. So, I mean, it's like we still have 5 months of this. And so they made her pay. We go to the airport, and she's so mad that she doesn't even say bye to anybody. She like literally gets out, opens the trunk, grabs her stuff, shuts it, and starts walking away. And I'm like, somebody needs to say something to her. So I get out and I run over to her and I give her a hug and I'm like, I am just so sorry. Like, I'm sorry for my role in this. I'm sorry for the way that you've been treated. I'm sorry that your voice wasn't heard. Like, I'm just really sorry. And she thanked me. We cried together for a moment and she left and she flew home. And it was weird because the team dynamic after that was, for a couple of weeks, it was actually so much better. And again, I felt guilty because I was like, well, I'm part of that. Like, I don't have anybody to argue with now. Our marriage started to improve. Like, but it was like a hush-hush conversation too, like within the squad, because of how it ended. We had a couple people on the squad throughout the course of the year leave. There was a girl who left after the first month. There was a girl who left after the third month. And there were like 2 other people who left before then. Like one girl, instead of leaving from Vietnam to Uganda, she went from Vietnam back home. And so there were people, but it was all very much like, I just feel like my time is over. I'm not supposed to be here anymore. And hers was so abrupt. And so like it didn't end on a good note. So there was a lot of kind of like drama surrounding it.
Yeah.
And then a lot of guilt on my part for a long time, for months afterwards. I felt guilty. So yeah, Uganda was awesome. And then we took a bus to Nairobi, Kenya. Kenya, I hated being in Kenya. Absolutely hated it. I think there was a lot of expectation after being in Uganda and loving Uganda so much. But we get to Kenya. We're in Nairobi for a couple of days. 2 of our squad mates get robbed at gunpoint in Nairobi.
Oh my gosh.
So there were a couple of guys who were like watching them at a cafe through the window. And then when they left, they followed them through an alley and like they had their backpacks and their computers and whatever and robbed them at gunpoint and took all their stuff. And so, you know, that was like the beginning of the month. And then my husband and I stayed back in Nairobi for a couple of days, had some married time. And then we went to like literally middle of nowhere, Kenya. We were near the Masai Mara tribe in Kenya, some of the most friendly people ever. But our host that month was like one of the creepiest people I've ever met in my entire life. Like he made me so uncomfortable. And every time I expressed my discomfort to our squad leaders, they would tell me to suck it up. And I was just like, that's awesome. Great. Yeah. And ministry was door-to-door evangelism. We preached at churches on Sundays. Kenya was the month where I experienced the most migraines. And so it was like every 4 days or so, 4 or 5 days, I was getting one of these like crippling migraines. And there were so many times like, you know, I usually wake up with a headache that like throughout the day turns into this migraine. And I know that about myself. And so there would be days where like I would wake up and be like, I have a really bad headache. It's going to be a migraine. And they're like, nope, you're going out to ministry today. And so I'm just going to do it, whatever. And I remember there would be times where we would be like in this Land Rover, you know, driving around this village, and the movement and the lights and the like ear piercing music would like intensify it much more quickly than it normally would. And I would be like in tears. And they would all just come over and lay their hands and like, we're going to pray. Like there's a spirit of something in your body and like, we're going to pray it out of you. There was one Sunday where I woke up with a migraine, which doesn't normally happen. Usually it's a progressive thing, but I woke up with a migraine. But it wasn't one of those, like, it was kind of different. So it's like, well, maybe I can still, you know, I'll just wear headphones. I'll try to drown out some of the noise. I'll wear sunglasses for the day. We went to this church and the speakers were turned up. So like, it was the loudest noise I have ever heard in my entire life. And everybody goes into the church and I stay in the truck and I'm laying down and they're coming out because I was supposed to preach that day. And so they come out and they're like, Toni, you need to come in. And I'm like, I'm laying here and my eyes closed. I'm crying. And I'm like, I can't, you guys, I cannot. And they're like, you have to. This is what you're called to do. You are being disobedient right now. You need to get out of this truck and go into the church.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
And I'm like, I'm not. You cannot force me. I cannot, like, I can barely breathe without it being painful. I am not. And so I didn't. And then that night, the entire team conversation was about my disobedience to God.
What did your husband think of all of this?
Very, very grateful. He was very much on my side. Like, you guys, Toni cannot function. This is not her just wanting to get out of ministry. He was increasingly frustrated because instead of it being an environment of, okay, let's pray for Toni for healing, it was like shame. And he was incredibly frustrated by that. But also he would admit this too, like, he is very much a people pleaser. He is not confrontational in the least. And so he was always trying to like diffuse every bit of, and I like, as the race went on, I was more like finding my voice more and more and being more open about how I felt about things. And so when I would express things, sometimes he'd be like, okay, Toni, take it down a notch. But he was mostly very supportive because he understood, like, you guys, this isn't a normal headache. Like, they're crippling for her. She used to take medication that costs $1,000 a month for her. Like, this isn't just her trying to get out of stuff. But it was almost like it was like to put on a show.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Like, I'm just trying to get out of ministry and I'm disobeying God. Like, I'm sick. Like, I can't.
Yeah, which chill. I bet if there was somebody in Kenya who had a migraine, they would be talking much nicer to the people that they are trying to minister to than you, you know?
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. So I was luckily that was in February. So February is already a shorter month. And we had started the month in Nairobi. So like my actual time in this village was like 19 days. And I was like counting down the seconds until we left. It was also during that month that we found out when we were flying home. Like, they bought our tickets for our trip back home. And so we found that out, and I was like, all right, we have this many days. Like, I cannot wait. So we go from there to Tanzania. Tanzania was pretty much more of the same, door-to-door evangelism, preaching in churches, teaching a lot of English classes to little kids who were learning English already. But then we also had a lot of downtime. And so Tanzania was one of the countries, actually probably the only country legitimately where we had to go out like in groups of 3 because where we were was so dangerous. Yeah. We were not allowed to be by ourselves. Obviously, girls cannot be alone. They said, like, if you go in a group of 3 girls, we want a guy with you still, because it was just so dangerous. And I'm like, so why are we here if it's this dangerous?
Do you know of any dangerous things ever happening in the history of the world race?
There were, so part of the reason that we didn't go to Rwanda, there was a squad in Rwanda the month before this that they had to evacuate. Because there were things going on. There have been months that they had squads in countries and had to pull them out, or last minute like change course like they did with us. Yeah. Off the top of my head, the squad that was in Rwanda the month before us is the only one I can think of, but I know there have been other instances.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Oh, goodness.
So that was, like I said, very uneventful. There was a lot of focus around, and things I didn't mention in like earlier months, but there was a lot of focus around having like a set amount of time set aside for like prayer and worship. And so like in Nepal, we had a 10-hour session. In Thailand, we had a 25-hour prayer and worship, like after a full day of ministry. And then we had a 25-hour prayer and worship thing.
Like y'all didn't leave? It was a lock-in or what?
Yeah, it was kind of like a lock-in. Oh, yeah, like a lock-in. Yeah. And it was after a day of ministry, and that was a rough one. And then we had like a 10 or 12-hour one in Tanzania after a full day of ministry, but the whole point, it was like overnight. And so it started at like 8 p.m. and we had to go till 8 a.m. And the whole point was about like pressing into God and trusting that He's going to give you the stamina and the energy to like spend time with Him. And and they purposely planned these like after full days of ministry because you're already exhausted and worn down. And so like, that's when you're really going to press into God the most.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow, that is crazy. Sleep deprivation for you.
Yeah. Yep. And isn't that kind of like the whole camp thing too? They wait to give the call of salvation until the very end. And yeah, so that's
when emotions are really high and your walls are probably down because you're going through so much physical exhaustion.
Yeah. Yeah. And so like, as I'm reading through my journals, because a lot of this, I feel like I've kind of like, I don't either intentionally or not, like just forgotten. And so I was going through like pictures on Facebook and talking to squad and teammates and reading through my journals. And we had a blog that we kept too. And I like went through and read every single blog entry we kept throughout the year. And it was like, I mean, it was when we made the transition from Asia to Africa where I really started questioning like my intentions for the trip. And was it because I wanted to do ministry and serve God? Yes, there was some of that. But I think the larger part of it was I wanted to travel the world. Like, because other than the few mission trips I took when I was in youth group or with Awana, like, I never traveled anywhere. Like, I never saw anything anywhere. So I wanted to travel the world, and I wanted to be the person that saved people. Like, that's what it was. Like, I wanted to be able to come back and be like, I led 100 people to the Lord. Like, I did that. And it was so much about me. And so it was really during our time in our 3 African countries that that kind of came to a head. And I realized like, oh, I think this was so much more about just being able to, I mean, realistically, for much, much cheaper, see the world than I would have been able to otherwise. And going to places that like as a normal tourist, I would never visit. And so I really struggled with that, like at the end of Africa, especially because like when you're in African countries where you stick out like a sore thumb, like everybody wants to get with you. Everybody wants to hear what you have to say because you're white.
Yeah, we experienced that in Peru when we were in Peru. All of the girls on our team who were white, they definitely got spoken to more, you know, but yeah, I love how honest you're being because I think when I applied for the world race, of course, there was, 20 years old? Of course, there's a part of me that is thinking, oh my gosh, I could knock out, at the time, I thought it was 15, but I guess it's 11. You know, I could knock out all those countries.
Yep.
Wow, that's so cool. And I can do ministry. And of course, there is a part of me that wanted to do ministry. That's what I intended to do for the rest of my life. But it was more so this idea of a once in a lifetime experience where you are going to go to so many places in 1 year. And when will I ever get to do this again? And yeah, a lot of it, I think, is subconscious. So at least for me, you know, that idea of you want to feel important. When I was at Bethel, of course, I wanted to be the Heidi Baker. I wanted to be one of those people who would speak at conferences, and you gain a lot of self-worth from that and having that dream. So I could totally see how you started to look inward and think, okay, I think I want to be the one to say, I saved all these people, and what does that say about my intentions for actually being here?
Yeah. And I mean, and like largely as I've been talking to people more about like people who went on the world race, so many of them said the same thing. Like, yeah, of course, like an underlying thing was I wanted to do ministry because I believed in like, you know, going and saving the world, but really I just wanted to go travel. And so I think it's hard like when you're young like that. I mean, and I was 25 and my husband was 26 when we did this, and we were some of the oldest people on our squad, and which says a lot about the age, you know, the ages of these people. Like most of them had just graduated college, like didn't have like any real world experience yet. I mean, there were a few people who quit like their jobs and we sold all of our possessions, or most of them, you know, and put everything else in storage. And it's like people do this thinking like, this is the segue into what is going to be my life. And it's just not the case. And so Yeah, it was really during our time in Africa that I was like, okay, what are my actual intentions? Why did I want to come here? I'm here now, so I'm still God has still used me. But there's so much. I mean, and like all of that's going on inside of me. And then you also still have like all the squad stuff. And so people are still like, we were going into month 10, and I still had not healed anybody. I had still not cast demons out. I still had not spoken in tongues. Prophecy didn't make sense to me. And there were so many times over and over again that people just kept telling me it's because of your lack of faith. And I'm like, why does that have to be it? Like, I question. I mean, I remember going back to training camp. They had us like all 50 or 60 of us get into a circle, like one big circle, and then there was a circle in the middle, and the inner circle had to face the people in the outer circle, and then the people in the outer circle had to give a prophecy. It was like instantly, like give a prophecy to the person we were looking at in the inner circle. And I was like, hi, what is prophecy? And so then they would explain this to us, and then I remember my prophecy being something like, so I closed my eyes and I was like, okay, God, what's the first thing that comes to my mind? Mm-hmm. And the first thing that, I don't know why I so vividly remember this, but it was a pinball machine. That's the thing that came to my mind. And so this girl that's standing in front of me, it's the only time I gave a prophetic word the entire year. This girl that's standing in front of me, I remember saying something crazy like, your heart is like a pinball machine, and when you pull back the like lever that shoots the ball, like you are the ball just jumping from place to place, and no matter where you go, like God's gonna use you. And like just something that sounded right. Like,
honestly, that sounds pretty good to me. I mean, those are what the words sounded like at Bethel.
Yeah.
It was always like an image, and then you would think, okay, what could that possibly mean? Because I remember even at Bethel before missions week, or maybe this was at Teen Mania, it was one of those for the missions. They had us take an object. So I have my makeup brush here, right? Okay. Mm-hmm. So they would be like, you're in another country, hold up an item and explain the gospel based off of this item. So we got pretty good at making things deep that weren't deep. Sure. So if a pinball machine pops into your head, okay, what could that possibly mean? And then you just kind of feel, it is the Holy Spirit, because when I told it to her, she cried, or, it seemed like it meant a lot to her. So you get convinced that those things can just be legit, or that they're prophetic words.
Right. Yeah, and I would hear like other teams in our squad, they were like, oh my gosh, we went to this village and we healed this woman and we did this and we cast out this demon. And I'm over here like, our team hasn't done anything like that. I haven't seen any, like, what is wrong with us? Why haven't I? And so I started questioning my faith, my intentions, my processing. Like, I was so convinced that our team wasn't seeing this because I lacked faith. Wow. It's like that thing. Like, I didn't grow up with this. It was all kind of just shoved in my face at training camp, and then like all throughout the world race. But I was convinced, like, I don't have faith. And so because I don't have faith, God's not going to use anybody else on my team. Once I start believing it, like, then we're going to see all the miraculous happen. And I never had the faith. And so we never saw the miraculous happen. And so and being in Africa, like, that was the continent people told us, like, if you're going to see healings, that's where it's going to happen. If you're going to see people cast out demons, that's where it's going to happen. Because I very distinctly remember at training camp, them saying, like, Africa is such a dark continent. Like, there's so much evil, like the spirit of evil just like surrounds the whole continent of Africa.
Which, what an offensive thing to say.
So horrible.
Yeah.
And so I went into this country or this continent thinking like, okay, we're going to cast out all this evil. Like, I was so naive about so many things. And so I just went into it thinking like, not that the African people or the Ugandan people or Kenyan people were like evil, but they're like the spirit of evil
was in the air. Wow.
And it was my job to get rid of that spirit of evil. And then when I walked away after 3 months in Africa and like didn't see the deliverance of evil, I was like, oh crap. Is it because I didn't believe enough? Is it because, and like my team would call me out on that because I was pretty honest. Like, I'm not sure if I believe. And actually, so that girl that was on my team that ended up leaving, she told me recently that our squad parents, she had expressed to them like early on in the race, like before we were put on the same team, that she was unsure about some of the things that were being taught. Like she didn't know she believed in healing, whatever. And they told her that she had a demonic spirit that needed to be cast out of her because she was questioning.
Oh my gosh.
And she's like, Toni, you're the first person I've told. And I was like, I am so sorry. And I'm like, you didn't leave after that? Like, she stayed for 5 more months.
To your perception of yourself. And also, it really discourages any sort of critical thinking or asking questions or just authenticity. Okay? Yeah. Because, while you're telling the story of, I felt like I was the problem, I felt like, why haven't I haven't experienced this? I think it might just be because you're very authentic. Because at Bethel, there are people who I do believe they genuinely believed it, and I also genuinely believed it, but I was very swept up in the wave of the Kool-Aid. But, some of the people who didn't experience it, I think it's just because they're really honest. And if they didn't feel it, they didn't feel it. Whereas I was kind of more open to people telling me, no, you're doing it. And I'm like, oh, cool.
You're not saying no, so I must be doing something right. Yeah. And we would get together for debrief with our squad, and I would hear other people speaking in tongues. I would see other people laying hands on and praying for healing. I would hear prophetic words. I receive prophetic words all the time. I even have like letters in my journals from squad mates with like prophetic words directly to me. Some of it like so intimate that like things I never told anybody, but the words I was given like spoke directly to the things I was struggling with. And I'm like, okay, well maybe this is real, but why am I not experiencing it? It's because of the lack of faith. Like everything goes back to the lack of faith. So yeah, we left Africa. I was very much like, we have 2 months left. I cannot wait to be done with this. Like I'm just so ready to go home. So then we flew from Tanzania to Latvia in Northern Europe, like up on the Baltic Sea. We went from 100 degrees to about 20 degrees. And we had spent the last 9 months of our lives in like extreme heat. Yeah. So then we went from that to winter. We had no clothing for that. Like we were not at all prepared. We were like at the end of our finances because it was the end of the race. So luckily we had some supporters who sent us some money so that we could buy coat and pants and gloves, whatever. We had another debrief in Latvia, and then we went up to this beautiful town right on the Baltic Sea called Liepaja. I'm sure I'm butchering that because they have a beautiful language and say it much better than I do, but Liepaja. And we primarily worked with this like after school program for boys. And there were some girls, but it was mostly for boys, and it was so fun. There wasn't any like door-to-door evangelism, anything like that, but I feel like I was at the point now where I'm like, I'm just gonna have fun with this. Like we have 2 months left. I can't wait to go home, but we're just gonna have fun. So we did that. We had a lot of downtime, which was really nice. We were in the same town as another team, so we did ministry with them a lot too. But it was mostly a month of just kind of like resting. It was like a month of like resting in the Lord and really just letting him work on your heart, working with this after school program. And we did a few other like small things, but that was our primary thing. My husband and I were able to spend so much good time together that month, which was really nice because, we were about to go home. And then that was also the month where we're like, we have to figure out what we're going to do when we go home. So we lived in Minnesota before the race. When we left for the race, we had made the decision, we're probably not going to go back to Minnesota. So where are we going to go? I was from North Carolina. He's from south side of Chicago. We knew for a fact we were not moving to North Carolina. Not ever. But we weren't sure if we wanted to like live near my husband's family. So he started looking for jobs. like while we were still overseas. So a lot of our time, like a lot of our downtime was him looking for and applying for jobs like all over the country.
Yeah.
We had interviews, he had interviews. You know, like that's what we did like pretty much during all of our downtime. That was really good. Then we moved to Estonia for month 11. And there was kind of like this, we all traveled to Estonia, and there was kind of this feeling of like, oh, this is the end. We're almost done. We're about to go home. Estonia, so our team, we traveled to, oh my gosh, I cannot even remember the name of the town we went to. We traveled to a town where we were supposed to be working with American missionaries who were in Estonia. Mm-hmm. And so our job was, we were going to be helping them with their ministry. Well, the week before we got there, their house burned down. And so our ministry that month turned into helping them move into a temporary apartment, reestablish their ministry, because like their whole ministry was out of their house and it burnt down.
Wow.
So we worked with this American family this month, really just loving on them. And which it was good. And it was almost like, oh, we get a taste of home, because these people, they're from Ohio. And so like they have, you know, like, my husband's from Illinois, like they have similar accents, and like they made American food, and it was almost like God is being so good to us, like he's easing us back into the American way of life. And it was like that last month, a lot more interviews. Like we spent so much of our time interviewing with church. My husband was applying for youth ministry positions. Mm-hmm. So we were interviewing with church after church after church. And like, that's what we did for a lot of it. During the month, my husband, or the men, so we had switched teams again. So I think there were 3 guys on our team by that last month. So the guys went off for a couple of days and like did their own kind of ministry. Nope, I lied. That was in Latvia. They went and did like manly ministry. So they like went and chopped wood, and and so the girls like worked with a couple of the girls in the after school program that was predominantly boys, while the men went on and did manly things. Mm-hmm. So I was wrong about that. That was Latvia. In Estonia, it was just serving this American family. So it was kind of like, in a lot of ways, I felt like we were ending the race. Like, all right, this is it. What are we doing? Like this is kind of like, is this normal? The last month is the easiest one. But it ended up being really good, because I didn't feel the pressure to perform anymore. I felt like by that point, like the pressure had just kind of eased off. Like people knew Toni's going to do it if she feels like she's supposed to, and we're not going to, like, we're just done.
Yeah.
So then that was the end. In a lot of ways, like, I mean, I could not wait to go home. Mm-hmm. I was so just like I said, I was counting down to the second until we were going to be back on U.S. soil. The trip was going to be done. But I tell you, that last week that we were in Estonia, before we like got together with our squad one last time, like all of us, my husband and I were laying in bed one night, and I was like, Jeremy, I don't know if I can do the last week. Like I cannot wait to go home, but I don't know if I can, whatever. So for whatever reason, on a whim, we messaged like the people in charge of the world race back in the States, and said, hey, can we go to Poland for a week, just the 2 of us, to end our time together? And they were like, yeah, sure. So we literally skipped the last week of ministry and took a bus down to Poland, just the 2 of us, and spent a week in Poland, and that's how we ended the world race.
Wow. That's crazy that they allowed that.
Good. I was shocked.
Yeah.
I was so shocked. So we got together one last time as a squad. We actually had a 23-hour layover in Istanbul, Turkey. And so that's where we did our last final debrief as a squad. And that was very much like, we prayed for our teammate who at the beginning of the year had decided to no longer wear her glasses. She had eventually been switched off our team. And so she, still went the whole year. was like one final plea to God for her to like have her vision healed. And then it was like on the plane on the way home from Istanbul that she put her glasses back on because her eyes weren't healed. That was the beginning of a lot of months of struggle when we transitioned back to the States.
What was the hardest part of getting back to the States and transitioning?
The overwhelming guilt in absolutely everything we did. So I remember we flew into New York, and then that was where everybody dispersed. And so from New York, you had to find your own way home. And so like I said, my husband's from the south side of Chicago. So we flew into Chicago because we still didn't know where we were going, where we were going to live. We didn't have a job. So we were going to be living with my in-laws until we figured our stuff out. So we flew into Chicago, and I just remember, like, we flew into JFK, and then my husband and I separately flew out of LaGuardia to, like, O'Hare or Midway, whatever. And I remember just the drive, like the Uber ride from JFK to LaGuardia. I am bawling because I'm looking at the city, and I'm like, there is so much money here that could literally go and change the world. And like, it's just here and nobody's doing anything with it. And we go back home, we kind of start to like settle into life. There was no like, here's how you transition back into, like, at the beginning of the trip, we had 4 days where they were like preparing us for India, right? Like, this is a culture shock you're going to experience. They didn't do that to come home. We had our last debrief, but there was no, hey, you're about to experience culture shock. Here's how you can ease your way back into American life. It was like, here you go. See ya. Thanks for a great year. And it was like everything we did. If we went out to a restaurant and I spent $10 on a salad, I was like, this is 3 days worth of food in Uganda. Like, it was like we went to a grocery store and I felt guilty over paying $3 for milk, like, because that was my food budget for a day in Thailand. Like, and so it was like everything I did, I felt guilty. And that was the first time, like those first 5 or 6 months after we returned, I was in a severe depression. I think just because even though I so badly wanted to leave, like, I don't really feel like we really got to hash out the things we experienced when we were on the race. And then we just came home and like everybody was supposed to just jump back into life. Like, you go get a job and you go do this and whatever. And I will say I'm grateful that I had my husband because we got to kind of go through that process together. And like I said, he's extremely adaptable. So he just kind of, like, it wasn't nearly as hard for him.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was like everything we did for months where I felt so guilty. Like, there are kids in Africa who are starving, and here I am, like, for my birthday, we're going and spending $40 on Giordano's pizza, and I can't believe that we're doing this. And then my husband got a job, and so we ended up moving from the south side of Chicago to Indiana, which is where we still live, actually. And like, he just kind of jumped right into his job, and like, you know, we just kind of went back to normal life. And for months I was like, but how can we live normally knowing that the world is so deprived? Like, that people are so hurt and struggling so much. And like, here we are just doing this. And I remember reaching out to like squad mates and even like leadership within the world race and the organization itself. And kind of the same thing that they would tell, like, you just need to pray. You just need to trust. You just need to like have faith that God's going to like take away your guilt, or you use that guilt and channel it to like, what are you going to do with that? How are you going to continue to minister? Like, it was just, I don't know. So I stepped away, not from faith itself, but just from like the idea of missions for a long time, because I didn't know how to, like, I didn't think that I could put myself back in that. And my husband, he took his youth students on short-term mission trips, like really just like Florida. We actually did a trip to Costa Rica one year. And I struggled so hard on those trips. I stopped going because I was like, I feel like this is a world race all over again. Mm-hmm. Like, just not as intense.
Yeah. And you just didn't like being back in that environment.
Yeah. And it was always a question of like, well, what good are we actually doing? Or is this to make ourselves feel good?
Yeah. And I think that that's a question that a lot of us who have done mission trips before and have kind of unpacked that have really had to ask ourselves, like how much good was actually done. And I'm curious, at the end of your missions or the world race, how many people do you think that y'all had successfully converted to Christianity?
I mean, if you're talking about our team, like the team of 6 that I was on specifically, a couple hundred maybe, like throughout the course of the year, maybe a couple hundred. Yeah.
So when you guys got back, how did you explain your experience to family members and friends and the people who had supported you? Did you guys kind of act like it was great, because they gave so much money to it?
100%. Yeah. I mean, I was reading back through my blogs just recently, and I was pretty honest in a lot of my blogs about how, because I did most of the writing. I was pretty honest about how I felt, but like when we were face to face with people, especially people who supported us, or even more so people who doubted the trips in the first place, it was all positive. Like I never expressed like how I truly felt, how we struggled in marriage, like never any of that, because I didn't want people to think they were right. And so I was like, yeah, greatest experience of our life. I'm so glad we did it. Like we got to see the world. We got to change the world. We brought people to Christ. Like hands down, so grateful. And I never told really anybody that I was doubting that we were actually supposed to do it in the first place. And a large part of it again was because I didn't want my husband to doubt what he felt so confident in.
Yeah. So was his experience similar, would you say? Did he also feel unnerved, or he felt pretty good?
He felt pretty good. Yeah.
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 I could imagine how, if that was Bran and he had a great experience, I wouldn't want to kind of be a Debbie Downer and say like, hey, this is actually how I experienced those same experiences. I walked away with something completely different.
Right.
Especially if he has such positive memories about it.
Right. Yeah. And it took me quite a few years to really start opening up to him about how I really felt about the race. And it really wasn't until, I don't know, like I said, like 5 years ago or so is when I really started to like process like the trauma I experienced as a kid. And like kind of bringing all that up and processing through it and going to therapy for it now. And then like bringing that into like, Jeremy, some of the things we experienced on the race, like they were not okay. It was, if we're talking biblical, like I don't think these things were biblical or godly. I think it was more, it was actually one of the first times I ever used the word cult-ish. And it was actually also around the same time, ironically, I started listening to you because of the whole Bethel is a cult thing. Like I remember telling him years ago, listening to another person who was actually kicked out of Bethel for asking questions. I remember she did a whole series on like YouTube about it. And I watched this thing and I was like, oh my gosh, Bethel's a cult. And then remembering that a lot of what the world race was in that time, Jesus culture. I don't know if you remember Jesus culture, but Jesus culture and Bethel. And I was like, it makes so much sense now. Like, I totally get why I felt so much discomfort with the world race and Bethel stuff. It's because they're like the same thing. It's just that world race is overseas for a year and not like in Redding, California.
Yeah. No, it's very similar, the dynamics.
Yes,
so where would you say you've landed now?
Yeah. So there was a long time where I questioned what I believed, like if I even believed in God. And so there was a lot where I was like, okay, I'm just going to stop. Because my husband to this day is still in youth ministry. And so it's hard when you have a spouse who's in a church doing ministry. Being the spouse of somebody who's in ministry, it's so taboo to talk about what you believe. But it's really been in the last like 2 years. Like I used to say that I was deconstructing, and I feel like somebody else on another podcast said that was like the word for a while that people used. And so I heard somebody say recently, it's not that I'm deconstructing my faith, it's that I'm disentangling my beliefs. And so there were so many years as a kid where I was taught, like, you believe in Jesus and the death and resurrection, and you do X, Y, and Z, and you're going to go to heaven. And you can't lose your salvation, but also if you do fill in the blank, you're going to burn in hell. And I was taught, like, you have to follow these very strict rules. You have to walk this line, and that's how you know you're a good Christian. And then we go on the world race, and we're essentially taught you're a good Christian if you speak in tongues and you prophesy and we never talked about raising the dead, but you heal the sick. We didn't do the raise the dead stuff, and it's like, you're a good Christian and you have faith if you do that. And they're so complete opposites of each other that I finally got to the point where I was like, I am tired of everybody telling me what I am supposed to look like in order to be a good Christian. So I'm going to sit down with my journal and my Bible, and I'm going to talk to God and, like, God, just tell me, like, what does it look like to be a good Christian? And then I got to the point where it was like, I'm not even focused on, like, being a good Christian. I just want to be a good person. Like, I want to be somebody who loves everyone and who is not going to, stand up from the pulpit and tell people they're going to burn in hell for all of eternity. Like, I want to be somebody who's going to make others feel wanted and appreciated, because I never felt that as a kid. I rarely felt like that on the world race. And, like, I just want to be somebody who's like, I love God. Let me show you that I love God. And it's not going to be about shoving anything in your face. And so it's been so much about disentangling childhood Christianity from world race Christianity. And my husband, in a lot of ways, has been the same. I don't know that he would call it disentangling, but in a lot of ways, he's been the same. And so it's been nice to, like, go on that journey together. And now we have a daughter too, who's 2. And, like, okay, how are we going to teach her? Like, what are we going to teach her about God? What are we going to teach her about what it means to love people, without making them feel like they're less than, without making them feel like fear. At 2 years old. Yeah. Like, I mean, we don't want her to think, oh my gosh, I yelled at Mom, I need to ask Jesus into my heart because I sinned. Like,
yeah, what if I go to hell when I'm 5 years old?
Yeah. So it's been hard because, like I said, my husband is still, like, actively at a church, working in ministry. And so, and for a while, like, I'm a teacher and I teach remotely now, but I taught at a Christian school for a long time. And so there was even that, like, well, what do I tell the kids? Like, I'm in the middle of this process. Like, I'm going to teach them what I believe, that God loves you. You need to, how are you going to show God's love? You're going to go love other people. Like, that's what we're going to do. And everything else, I'm not touching. And so that's what I did when I taught in the school.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that there's something just very empowering about allowing yourself to either deconstruct or detangle and really just look at everything you've been told, because I've said it so many times before. I mean, when it comes to Christianity, there's so many sectors of it that it doesn't even feel like the same religion. So you're getting mixed messaging depending on who you're listening to. So I think allowing yourself to actually just sit with God, sit with yourself, and be okay with what you decide, what feels right to you in your spirit, and allowing yourself to go down that road without that fear looming of, oh, I'm going to go to hell. He's going to be so mad. Because at the end of the day, we should all be able to ask questions, and the truth should prevail. I mean, that should be the way that it is. And I love how you focus on just loving God, loving others, just being a good person, because I think that, so often that kind of goes to the wayside a bit. Right.
Yeah. There's just too much. I mean, I still have friends who, like, I have a friend who's still in the church I grew up in, and the judgment and the condemnation, I feel like that constantly, that she lives in, and that she kind of, like, portrays or, like, puts out into the world. And even, like, on the world race side, like, so many people still, I mean, honestly, I'll say world race, like, our squad of 60, by the time we came home, there were probably 50 of us. And out of those 50 people, I would say at least half of them no longer have a faith at all. And I've heard that that's pretty common. And for a long time, like before I started really processing things, I was like, well, what kind of faith did they really have if they came home and now they're suddenly atheists? Like, okay, being very judgmental. But the more I talk to people who have walked away from the Christian faith, the more I've realized that a lot of those people started questioning what they believed while they were on the world race, because there were so many things they experienced that just didn't align with who they thought God was or should be.
Yeah.
And then they really started diving deep into religion and theology and like breaking apart the Bible. And that's when they started, deconstructing. And then, I would say a good half of them no longer have a faith or a Christian faith at all. And so like my question to like the World Race Organization would be like, how do you guys think that you play a part in that? Because there's so much focus on saving the world and on the gifts of the Spirit, but like, how are you helping the people who are serving?
No, absolutely. Yeah. And it's not a coincidence, I don't think, that, because I could say the same for people I went with to Bethel. I'd say it's about 50-50. A lot of people have walked away. And I mean, we were, okay, not the most on fire for God, but that is how we felt. We were like, we are revivalists. We are world changers. And to see, just how quickly things have changed. And a lot of it has to do with the harm that people experienced in these systems. And also the idea that a lot of these people, they did want authenticity. So when I look at some of these deconstruction pages that I follow, I mean, these people they were the people in the Word every single day. They wanted more of God, And the reason why they end up going down that path is because they really, really wanted to know, they wanted authenticity, they wanted true love, and it kind of fell apart for them, and I think just, it's interesting. I think that people, we have all different ways of dealing with it. Some people like deconstruct and they don't believe, some people reconstruct. And I think that it's just so empowering to feel like I get to decide what path I move forward from here.
Right. Yeah. Without everybody telling me what it should or shouldn't look like.
Exactly. Yeah. What do you wish you could tell yourself going back to that time in your life?
Oh my gosh. So many things. But I think I would tell myself to stop focusing so much on like the travel aspect of it. Like if I was purely about the ministry, then I need to be okay with doing ministry right where I was in our city of Minnesota, because there was so much ministry to do there. And I mean, I tell people now, like there was a girl in the youth group that my husband has like 5 or 6 years ago that did, so the organization with the World Race does other trips similar to the World Race, but not as long and not to as many countries. But there's a trip called Gap Year, and it's 3 countries in 9 months. So you spend like 3 months in each country. And there was a girl in our youth group that I was like, and this was before I really understood like all the World Race stuff. But I was like, you have to go on this trip. Oh my gosh, you have to go. So she ended up going on that trip. And like she and I talked recently too, and I asked her if she regrets it. And she's like, I don't regret the cultural perspectives that I gained from it. And I would say the same thing about the World Race. But she's like, the trip itself, yes. And so I think that I would say the same thing, like in a lot of ways. Like, I am so grateful for the cultural perspectives. I visited places that I would never have gone to otherwise, even as a tourist. But the trip itself, like I would never tell anybody to go on the World Race. And I regret telling her to do the Gap Year trip. And even if somebody said, well, I'm going to go on the World Race, what is your advice? Do not go married. I tell people, I honestly don't know how we're still married.
Wow.
Other than we just decided there are people who went on that trip who were married who are now divorced. There are people who met on that trip who got married and are now divorced. And like divorce itself, I know is a very taboo thing, but I seriously look back and I'm like, I don't know how we lasted after that year.
Yeah.
It was so, I mean, we grew, but it was so damaging to our marriage in a lot of ways. And I think in ways that we're still trying to process. And we came home in 2013. So.
Yeah, especially when you guys were only married a couple years. That is very early days. And it's not like you guys were older, you know? I mean,
yeah, we were
in my mind, it's like 25 is like nothing, you know, like you're still so young at that point, you know? So, yeah, I can imagine that would put a lot of stress on a marriage when you're not getting that quality, intentional time together. And the priority is the mission, you know? That's really rough for sure.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for agreeing to come on and share. I have heard about this for so many years, you know, and like I said, I wanted to do it so bad. And literally, as you were talking, I just kept thinking, oh my gosh, thank God I didn't do this thing. Because I couldn't have handled it. I'm thinking about all the countries that you went to and the circumstances that you had. And had I gone as a single person, I know you're saying don't go married, and but I'm also like, man, I can't imagine me going single either. I just think nobody should go, you know?
Yeah.
Because that's a lot, you know? And I had always wanted to hear more about it because it was kind of, a lot of people viewed it as the ultimate goal. Like, had you gone on the world race, you can really brag. Oh my gosh, like I was so tough. I did this. And I've always wanted to talk to somebody who actually did it, because you only hear just kind of stories.
Right. Yeah. I'm so glad we've been able to talk about this. And if anybody is considering it, I would really encourage you not to.
Steer clear. Maybe don't go.
Oh, yeah. If you want to do mission work, go to one place and stay there.
A long time.
Gosh.
And focus on loving people and not conversion. That's my biggest thing. Yeah.
Yep.
But thank you so much for coming on. This was so great. And
thank you for having me.
Thanks. Yeah, if you guys could leave a review, that would mean the world to me. And I will be back next week with another episode of Healedish.